So I read the book Sapiens in early 2017, and Harari obviously was talking about a lot of things that I thought might happen in the future, but he kept talking about Bitcoin. And so I started studying it a bit, and I didn't even get to the point of understanding that it was finite, truly finite, compared to anything else we've ever had as an asset. Because I was a hard money guy. Like in 2008, when the crisis happened, and I had the guy sat on the desk next to me in Tokyo going down to his Citibank account and taking all the cash out because he thought that Citibank was going to go bankrupt.
Wow.
Like that's how, like the level of panic that there was within a financial services industry. So I was, when they obviously came and started saving things with printing just a huge amount of money, which is nothing compared to what we see being printed today. I looked at that and said, okay, my money's being debased. I need to find something to store value. And so I started buying gold. In 2009, I started buying gold quite actively. So when I started to understand Bitcoin, and then when I realized that it was completely finite, that was really the moment. It was probably I know when it was. It was in October 2018, because Bitcoin was trading at about 6,000. And I went to bed just after listening to the Pomp podcast with a guy called Murad, who, if you've been around in Bitcoin a little while, you've probably heard of him. And I remember waking up the next day, it was a Saturday morning, and just thinking to myself, I don't have enough Bitcoin. And that was really the moment where it flipped. And so, yeah. But then it was still from there, it was a gradual process of learning, getting higher conviction, getting more conviction, and, to the point which, again, Saylor always says, buying the top forever. Once you got that level of conviction, you can sit through any drawdown. I remember a funny story when I'd been trying to pitch my boomer uncle for years to buy Bitcoin. And then I remember we were at I guess it was Christmas of 2022. So FTX had just happened, and Bitcoin was trading like, I don't know, 20K, 18K or something. And we were in my parents' kitchen, and he sort of comes up next to me. He's like, so how are you feeling about your Bitcoin now, eh? It was such a comical moment, because I was just like, wow, you just, you don't understand anything. Like I'm more convicted than ever. Like this is the moment where you just back up the truck. And I remember I took all my cash I had left in the world and put it all into the Grayscale Bitcoin ETF, because it was a 50% discount.
Yes.
But yeah, for me, that was just a lovely opportunity that we were given. Obviously, it was a painful one for the industry, but
right.
That's the great thing about Bitcoin. It goes through all these moments of just getting knocked down and then just getting back up stronger than ever. It's just relentless. And so, I count myself very lucky to have really got Bitcoin by that stage.
That is wild. That is so cool. Okay, so that actually leads me perfectly into the next thing I wanted to ask you about supply, or like supply shock, and digital scarcity, and perfectly finite asset, a money container, money. I always talk to people too about, you have money, fiat, as your time and energy being poured into a bucket, and fiat is that hole, the hole in the bucket, where Bitcoin is the first bucket that's perfectly finite, equal to your finite time and energy. And we've never had an asset that is equally finite to your time. I mean, even gold and silver, like you said, you and I are both getting into gold and silver 15, 17 years ago, and that still has a small inflation rate to it. And so, and amongst some other things that make it tough. But I would love for you to unpack just this, because I even just got a couple of comments recently on some of the videos we just dropped of there can never be a supply shock with Bitcoin. Like, it's all, don't believe these people. It's, there'll always be more sellers. And so, like, again, people confusing things and just conflating
Right.
things. So I'd love for you to unpack really, really what the supply shock is and why Bitcoin will continually, and you kind of just touched on this, which is, these hitting these, going up and then coming back down, and building this level of conviction where you really, truly never can go all the way back down again. Cause now you've built so much education and conviction into
Mm-hmm.
these certain stair steps that you can't go back down. Now with companies and the treasury companies, all the nation states coming in, like you've alluded to, we're kind of coming full circle with this question in a way of, there is truly this supply shock coming. So I would love your thoughts on what that is, just unpacking it for the average person that might not understand kind of the nuance to that and why that is so important.
What I would say is that, like I said just now, those moments where we do see a big drawdown are very healing and very powerful in making Bitcoin stronger than it ever was before. There will be moments where Bitcoin is unlocked. There will, there still the largest amount of Bitcoin is held by individuals. And, many of those whales I often talk about, like, as I said, back in 2011, when the guys who were talking about Bitcoin around me, they were just saying, oh, the tech's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And they only had to put a few $1,000s in it, and now they're billionaires, right? So how convicted are they? They didn't need to go through the hard slog that you and I went through,
Right.
Of, I wiped myself out with leverage. I traded shit coins.
Mm-hmm.
I did every stupid thing you can possibly imagine to lose exposure, which generally just kept reinforcing in me that Bitcoin should be the focus. But let's be very honest and let's be very clear. The reason that it's taken us so long to get through 100K convincingly is because there's a lot of people that bought Bitcoin early and don't necessarily have the same level of conviction than we do. I don't want to say that people got lucky, but they did. A lot of people did. They bought a few $1,000s worth of Bitcoin and now it's worth billions. All right. And, maybe
that's
they've
hard
been
for
selling
people
a
to
little
accept
bit
about life. Yeah. People have a hard time accepting that. Like, that happens.
Look, I live in Switzerland. Switzerland is one of the countries where Bitcoin was adopted very early by people.
Mm-hmm.
FINMA actually were the leading regulator in 2018, putting full guidelines around every cryptocurrency. And, they've been the leader. I would say it's only now that regulators globally are catching up. So Switzerland was always a very advanced country in the industry. And so you had, obviously, the Ethereum Foundation was based here, right? So you had a lot of very early people in Bitcoin in Switzerland. But again, as I said, they never really made much of a distinction. For them, it was about the technology. So they participated in the Ethereum ICO and got really rich on that as well. And, all the others. And so for them, crypto and Bitcoin is quite interchangeable. And I find this a lot when I meet people in Switzerland that have been in Bitcoin for a very long time. They're not Bitcoin maxis. They're not Bitcoin maxis by any stretch of the imagination. So like, what do? They just keep selling and selling and selling. And so this is what happens. It goes into the hands of more highly convicted people like Saylor and other Bitcoin treasury companies. And those Bitcoin we know are not moving forever. But, I work closely with Willy Woo on our dollar fund. And Willie says the same thing. There will always be selling as we go into these cycles. As we get more and more heated, you're going to see the whales releasing Bitcoin. So I'm not under any illusions that the whales won't be selling. But I think that the way that people are buying is actually much more clever. You're not getting that ridiculous level of hype. And so you're not seeing the runaway in the same way. And so, as I said before, you've got this sort of naturally equalizing step function where you step higher, the whales come in and they go, okay, we'll sell into that. The conviction buyers, which have the bigger wallet, are just hoovering it all up until they exhaust the selling and then they go again. The other thing to talk about, and there's a lot of FUD about this, is quantum computing, right?
Mm.
Quantum will unlock some of the lower grade encryption wallets that sit there with lost coins, right? I think there are 4-5 million lost Bitcoin. So at some point, those wallets where everyone else is able to upgrade and move to a quantum resistant wallet, at some
Mm.
point those coins are going to become available, which again will be good for Bitcoin because then you have everything in circulation again. You have the full money supply. It might slow things down for a couple of years, but at the end of the day, everybody is starting to get the joke that they need more Bitcoin. And so you've just got an enormous bid for Bitcoin, and that's not going to go away.
That's wild. Absolutely wild. I would love to attend or segue to Bitcoin treasury companies, and I would love your thoughts on just everything that's going on there.
Yeah.
And I want you to touch on some of the stuff you guys are working on, what you guys are doing, and in your goals. Jack Muller is what he's doing, and obviously
Mhm.
Sailor, and Metaplanet, and there's so many. It just feels like every day there's like 10 new announcements. What are your thoughts on just kind of this space and kind of where we're at in this that the cycle, I guess, of Bitcoin treasury companies?
Yeah, I talked about this on a podcast last week. I think that people need to be careful. I think that, obviously there have been some very successful companies that have replicated the MicroStrategy model, like Metaplanet, Smarter Web Company in the UK, um, Coincilium in the UK, H100, the blockchain group. But you're also going to get a ton of opportunists. And I think the opportunists, they're not Bitcoiners. They don't understand the aggressive model. They don't probably understand financial engineering to the degree that you need to. These are all things that are really important. And they're obviously not necessarily the same level of trustworthy people that you want to see running these companies. You want purist Bitcoiners running these companies because Bitcoin tends to align values. People tend to become much more long-term minded in terms of the way they approach things, and they can afford to be, right, because they're basing themselves on a Bitcoin standard. So when you put all of those things together, I think it's really important to just be cautious in this space. And I mentioned a few companies. I'm not necessarily endorsing them. I think that I am very comfortable with Saylor. He's shown me for 5 years that he is absolutely purist and focused. Um, and Simon, I've known a long time at Metaplanet, so I know how focused he is. With Dylan on board as well. But everybody else is fairly early innings. I think that the companies that I mentioned, for me, those are interesting. But I'm certainly not at the point where I'm putting full trust and conviction in absolutely everything. And I think that's the thing. It's like you got to understand there's a track record to this. Taylor's been
Yeah.
through a bear market,
Mm-hmm.
right? He's iterated through a bear market. Um, so you want to make sure that people have that level of conviction that they can keep buying at that FTX type dip, right? And they know that they want to keep accumulating more Bitcoin. Yeah, so I urge people to just tread with caution. The MNAV volatility is only going to increase. A lot of people have been concerned about Metaplanet lately, but if you look at Metaplanet's MNAV, it's really interesting. It sort of goes in waves, right? So if you look at Metaplanet over its life, it's gone in waves, and again, it's the accretive nation of the dilution that these companies are doing is healing, right? Like if they have a higher MNAV, they're accreting more value, which means they're paying for that MNAV premium even faster. And so when you've got a company like, well, what's going on with Metaplanet at the moment, where they've been sort of drifting a little bit, the stock's been drifting a little bit lower, they're accreting at the same rate that they were. So MNAV is just going drastically lower. I think
Yeah.
we were as high as 8. Now we're at like 3.3. So, you're getting to a point where shorts, by the way, are getting given confidence
Mm.
they're going, oh yeah, now people are starting to see that we were right, because you got a MNAV compression. But then they hit a point where that's compressed too far, and it triggers things the other way. They start getting squeezed. They get called on their margins. We see it in Japan a lot. There's a lot of sort of day trader short selling that happens. So it's Mesoplanet particularly. It feels like the MNAV trades in waves, and so I like trading the waves of their MNAV. So I think it's an interesting one.
If you like that clip, then you definitely got to check out this next spicy clip. I think you're really going to like it. Come on, check it out. But if you want the full version, the full interview, then check that out over here. Come on, do it. I'll see you in there.